So once again, good morning, everyone. Very excited to have Deep back today. My name is Savannah Blance Maria. Welcome to today's webinar, Deep in Downtown Part 2, Deep Programs Update for Main Street Sustainability and Open Space. In a moment, I will introduce today's speakers, but first, just a few words. Connecticut Main Street Center is the export resource for developing and sustaining vibrant downtowns and main streets that fuel our state's prosperity. We are grateful to our sponsors and funding partners that make this work possible. Connecticut Main Street Center's founding sponsors are Eversource and the State of Connecticut's Department of Economic and Community Development. Additional funding comes from Webster Bank, Travelers, and Liberty Bank. We all know a great downtown when we're in it. It's a feeling and energy that we can sense, see, and experience, but it can be hard to articulate what exactly makes a main street great. So we've broken it down into 6 qualities to make it easier to grasp. There is always dedicated Main Street management. The Main Street is connected by multiple modes of transportation for people to access. It is welcoming, friendly, and inclusive. Sustainable practices are in place that bring life and vibrancy for today and for the future. Small businesses are supported and encouraged, as well as residential and commercial development. And there is a unique sense of place. I'd like to introduce our guest speakers this morning, Chris Nelson, Supervising Environmental Analyst of the Sustainable Materials Management Program at CT Deep, Danica Dorowski, Urban Forestry Coordinator in the Division of Forestry in the Bureau of Natural Resources, also at Deep, Stephen Perry, Environmental Analyst, Office of Land Acquisition and Management from Deep, and Emily Tully, Client Concierge Service Team Member in the Office of Innovative Partnerships and Planning in the Office of the Commissioner. All of our speakers this morning are from the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. And with that, I will pass it over to Emily. Oh, I'm sorry, Emily, you're muted.
Thank you. I was clicking too many buttons trying to share the screen. Thank you for joining everybody for part 2 of the webinar series Deep in Downtown with Connecticut Main Street Center. This time we'll give a programs update on sustainability and open space programs. So on the docket this morning, we have open space and watershed land acquisition and urban green and community garden grant programs from Stephen Perry, urban and community forestry grant programs from Danica Dorowski, sustainable materials management and waste management updates from Chris Nelson, and on behalf of Amanda Limisher, our Brownfields program coordinator, I will give an update on our Brownfield Municipal Grant Program. And we will have some time for questions and answers after each part of the presentation, as well as at the end. So with that, Stephen, please feel free to take it away.
Cool. Thank you very much, Emily. Thanks everyone for coming this morning. My name is Stephen Perry. I work in the Land Acquisition and Management Unit at DEEP. We serve as the real estate arm of the agency. We do things like easements, granting access for scientific research, or like utility work on state lands. More importantly, maybe to this group, my unit also manages several open space kind of themed grants in supporting both the acquisition and improvement of open spaces. And so if we can go to the next slide. I'll give a little bit of background first. By statute, the Connecticut seeks to conserve 21% of the total land area of the state as open space, which we generally define as used for conservation, recreation, and most importantly, that it's protected by some mechanism, so someone couldn't just come and develop it. So 21%, we think right now we're about 80-ish% of the way there. 10% owned by the state, 11% owned by our partners. So we're currently at somewhere around 520,000 acres in total. And the primary way the state helps municipalities and land trusts and water companies conserve open spaces through the Open Space and Watershed Land Acquisition Grant Program, which I'll refer to as OSWA for time's sake. This is a state bond-funded yearly grant program that's open to municipalities, generally land trusts or conservation nonprofits and water companies, like I said. Any funding that the state provides to these organizations to acquire, this kind of open space, we put something like a conservation easement on it, and that allows the state to ensure that tax dollars are being used for the intended purpose in perpetuity. So if someone is awarded OSWA funding and they use it to acquire a certain property, it's conserved in that state forever. It can't go and be sold by the municipality or the land trust for development of housing or commercial space or anything like that. So I will go to the next slide, please. So the maximum award of this grant program is 65% of the fair market value, and that is confirmed by 2 appraisals that applicants are required to submit along with their application. To encourage the ability to preserve open space in areas that might not have traditionally held large tracts of these kind of really pristine properties. If the project would take place in a distressed municipality, targeted investment community, or an environmental justice census tract, that can be up to 75% of the fair market value. In addition, because of a recent statutory change, we allowed the kind of the costs associated with preparing the grant, like procuring or preparing surveys, the legal closing costs on the property, and the cost of those appraisals for projects that take place in those 3 areas. Those costs can be reimbursed back to the applicant as well. And then on the bottom right of this slide, there's a map to our environmental justice GIS map layer. And you can use that to enter the address of your project and determine if it's in an EJ community, target investment community, or distressed municipality. Next slide. So we have a team at DEEP from our wildlife divisions, our parks divisions, our land and water resources division that come together and really holistically evaluate these applications, and we score them on factors both on like the quality of the ecological significance, the core forests, the undisturbed wetlands, the quality of the fish, things like that. We also take into account EJ recommendations, how the property might help to mitigate climate change, how it's connected both in terms of proximity, but also on like public transit nodes. And then we, of course, evaluate the applications for consistency with local support, with local plans of conservation and development, things like that. So that's all listed here. It's things listed here and more. It's a really holistic look. We know not all properties can address every single, criteria on here, but we take a really broad look. Next slide. And so this is the really deep, like kind of crown jewel of open space grants. I said a little bit earlier, we've acquired about 519,000 acres total. 49,000 acres of that has directly come from the OSWA program. And really that number is more than 200 million now with the latest grant round. So this is a really, really substantial grant program that's done a lot. And it's a heavy application, but there aren't a lot of states where you can go and get 65% or 75% of the fair market value in state funding to preserve these tracts of land. So it's a really substantial and an excellent grant program. My colleague Allison Clark has managed this for like 20 years now. She is the one to get in contact with, and applications for this round are due November 3rd. And it might be, we can go to the next slide and we'll do Q&As after. The Urban Green Community Garden Grant Program, UGCG, this is my grant program, and I'm really, really excited about this grant program. It's definitely underutilized, and I'm really trying to kind of get it out there. So it's again established by the same statute that established the Oslo program, but instead of acquisitions, UGCG's goal is to provide municipalities and nonprofits the ability to expand, create, or enhance green spaces, public green spaces in distressed municipalities, targeted investment communities, and environmental justice communities. So unlike Oslo, where the property could be located in any portion of the state, UGCG, the property must take place in one of those three designated areas. There isn't a maximum request per application, and the same entity is able to submit multiple applications for different projects. And applications are again due November 3rd. Next slide, please. So the UGCG program is kind of unique in that, one, it's very flexible, but two, it was designed and I implemented it in such a way to make it as accessible as possible, both in terms of where we can place money, but also the process of applying and then administering the grant. This grant program will fund or has funded really large individual projects, like $500,000 to riverfront recapture in Hartford for multi-use trail enhancements along the Connecticut River. But we also gave $10,000 or $15,000 to a very small nonprofit in New Britain to improve like a 1/4 acre community garden in a residential area. This grant program is designed for both those kind of professional conservation organizations and municipalities, but also those neighborhood level nonprofits. So it's the reporting requirements, as I'll explain in another slide. The application process is extremely, extremely simple. And part of that is founded in the understanding that, Northeast, Northwest Connecticut, Southeast Connecticut have the ability to use the Oslo program to acquire these, several 100-acre parcels. But those parcels might not exist in your Hartfords and New Havens and Bridgeports and Waterburys. So where UGCG comes in is it allows both municipalities, but also those neighborhood, associations, the community-based nonprofits to come in and say, hey, we know of this, random parcel that's in our neighborhood that's overgrown or it's not doing anything, and we'd like to turn it into a community garden. We'd like to turn it into a pocket park, right? So it serves as supplemental funding to larger projects, and it will fund entirely those smaller projects. So just as an example, of course, we'll fund trees, seed mixes. We'll fund the things you need to make a community garden. We'll do walking paths, tables, benches, trash and recycling containers, small structures like sheds, and even if you needed to rent some maintenance equipment to kind of clear brush or something like that. We'll also fund professional services like engineering and design work, provided that the design work ultimately leads to the construction of something. We won't fund 100% design work. In your application, you must also show how that design work will then be immediately used to open the park or to install the community garden. So just be careful with that. We'll also do limited green infrastructure things like bioswales, rain gardens, and things of that sort. So next slide, please. So this is a pretty simple application. You'll need to provide, the QR code on the top right of all of these slides will take you to the relevant landing page, and then the URL is on the bottom. But in general, you'll just need to provide budget, the completed application and narrative form, provide some mapping that can just be a Google Maps screenshot or a screenshot of your municipality's GIS layer. Timeline, you'll need to provide, it doesn't need to be professional design, but give me an idea of what's going to go where. And maybe most importantly, partner support letters. We're looking for support from, if you're a nonprofit, from the municipality, from a council of government, and from other, from neighbors, from your municipal commissions, from just showing us that you've taken into account community feedback at what you'd like to go there. Importantly, for nonprofit applicants, you must show evidence that you're able to access the site if you don't own it. So a very common structure for community gardens is that it's on municipally owned property that's leased to a nonprofit for like $1. In that case, we need a copy of the lease. And if you don't have one, we need some kind of paper documentation from the owner of the parcel saying you can undertake work here and you can administer the grant here. If the nonprofit owns the parcel, perfect. But if they don't, they need to provide evidence to the satisfaction of DEEP that they can accept the grant funding and then, execute the project. Likewise, for municipalities, we need a letter of authorization or a resolution from the town or city council. The trickiest part about UGCG is the match. So this is a 50% match reimbursement-based grant program. And that means whatever amount you're requesting from the UGCG program, you must evidence that you have that amount or more in other funds. So if you're requesting $10,000 from this program, you must show us that you have $10,000 worth of other funding to complement the UGCG dollars. We recognize that that can be an impediment to smaller community-based nonprofits. So we'll of course take dollar for dollar match. If you have other fundraising, that can of course count, but we'll also take volunteer labor or donated professional goods or services, as well as other federal, state, and local grants as match. So let's say you ask for $10,000 and $5,000 of your match is going to come from, you did some private fundraising to support the project. That other $5,000 can be made up entirely of volunteer labor. We equate one volunteer hour with approximately $30. So that can, for smaller projects, add up very quickly. The exact number is in the FAQ document available on our website. But again, we try to make this program as accessible as we can, both to apply for and implement for smaller nonprofits who don't have professional staff. They're just a group of people trying to make their neighborhood a little bit better. And then next slide. Oh, that's it for me. Thanks, everyone. Oh, $4.2 million over 18 years or so. That's a lot of money, but in the past, we've awarded about 25 to 30% of the total we could each round. This is a yearly grant program, so I am the first full-time program lead that this grant has had in a long time. So my ask of everyone on this call is if you have a nonprofit in mind, if you have a municipality in mind, that if they could benefit from this, please send it out, send them my contact information or email me with their contact information. This is a really, really great grant program. So yeah, thanks.
Savannah, I don't know if you want to do some questions now or save them all the end.
We can take a few now if Steven's open to that.
Sure.
We did have a few that come through, so I'll just stick to the 3 that came in for now, and we can come back to anything at the end. First, does UGCG only go to cities/urban areas?
No, so it's based on distressed municipalities. There are, cities tend to be overrepresented in that grouping, but there are plenty of, rural and suburban towns that have either a distressed municipality designation, right, and plenty of rural or suburban towns that have EJ census tracts. So there's a map that's listed, that's linked in one of the slides, or if you just search Connecticut Deep Environmental Justice Map Viewer, you can enter the address, and so long as it's shaded in any color of like red or orange, it's an eligible project area.
Thank you. And next question, this will be actually the last one we take for now. Sorry if you stated this, but can UCGC money be used for property acquisition?
No, it is not that would be OSWA, but UGCG cannot fund direct acquisition. However, if someone acquired a property that was eligible for UGCG funding, we would consider the amount of money spent on that acquisition towards the matching funds component.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's helpful. Okay, that was it for now, so I think we can move on.
Okay, my turn. Hi, everyone. My name is Danica Drosky. I'm the Urban and Community Forestry Coordinator. I oversee a statewide technical and financial assistance program. We work with municipalities, nonprofit organizations, community groups, really anyone who's interested in growing and maintaining their urban and community forests. It occurred to me as Stephen was talking that it might be helpful to also make the connection with Main Streets about why you all might want to think about an urban forestry grant. If you're not familiar with some of the research on trees, there's been really awesome research about the ability of trees along right-of-way to slow traffic. So there have been some great projects, actually one in New London where they use trees as a traffic calming project. So trying to slow down traffic on a busy street with trees. There's also been some great research that finds that people spend more time at local businesses and even spend more money at those businesses when there are trees surrounding sort of those shopping areas. And then last thing, there's also some great research that shows people are more likely to walk more often and walk longer distances when they are in communities with trees. So hopefully those points resonate with some of the work you all are doing with Connecticut Main Streets. So now I'll get in, you can go to the next slide, to some of the more specifics about my grant program. I have several grant opportunities. There's a link to all those different opportunities. Each one has a little bit of a different flavor. But for the sake of time, I'm going to be speaking specifically about my Trees for Communities grant program because that's open right now and is closing at the end of this month. So if you're interested, now's the time to start considering it. This grant program can support a variety of urban and community forestry project types. Some that would be probably very relevant for this audience would be things like tree planting and maintenance. We don't just have to fund, we're not just funding getting trees in the ground, but if you have deferred maintenance for mature trees along some of your main streets, our grant program can also support maintenance and care for those mature trees as well. We also can support impervious surface removal with the intention of creating space for tree planting. So if you're developing a new roadway or you're doing work on a roadway where there's limited planting space, that happens in a lot of our communities in Connecticut, our grant can also support work to remove the impervious surface so that there is space to plant a tree. And then, you know, sort of embedded in some of those larger projects, some of the more successful applications we see really tightly embed community into that work, whether that's through a workforce development project or some other type of community outreach, education, engagement around these projects. I'll just highlight those projects. If you go to our website, you'll see a whole list of different eligible project types, as well as some examples of successful applicants from previous rounds. So that should give you a good sense of what we're looking for. Awards are for up to $200,000. You know, just like Stephen said, we will fund a small project, we'll fund a big project. You don't have to max out that award. We just want to see actionable, well thought out projects that reflect community needs. We are a federally funded program, and as such, we have some geographic constraints in where this funding can be used. The link provided in this slideshow will take you to our urban forestry grant eligibility tool that outlines the communities that are eligible to apply for this grant. And I should be clear, it's not, the applicant doesn't have to be from that community. The work needs to benefit residents of that specific community. Similarly to, Stephen's, program trying to increase access to our grant programs, we have also invested a lot in our grant programs to make them more accessible. If you go to our website, you'll see we have a webinar where we do a deep dive of what the application looks like. We also created a first-time grant writer's guide that really takes you step by step and provides examples of successful proposals from previous rounds, so you really can see what the reviewers are looking for when they're evaluating these. And then we also have a partnership coordinator position that is providing ongoing technical assistance to grantees, both in the application proposal writing phase. So if you're new to urban forestry, I imagine a lot of you, maybe urban forestry is not something you deal with all the time. So you want to install trees, but you don't know best practices. We're here to help. We're here to help make sure that best practices are reflected in your proposal so you can put together a competitive proposal. And similarly, if funded, we are also there to help, when it comes time to get the shovels ready and get your hands dirty, we're also available to provide that technical assistance. So we don't want the know-how to be the limitation to accessing this program. We just want to fund good projects that are going to be impactful. You can go to the next slide. I think the next slide is my last slide with my contact information. I do want to highlight my program is a fantastic complement to the UCGC grant program that Stephen just highlighted. We do not have a match requirement for our grant program. However, we are federally funded, so you can use, if you get my grant, you can use that as match for Stephen's grant. And I think these two grant programs can work nicely together because I'm a forestry grant, so I'm going to pay for trees, but I'm not going to pay for flowers or flower boxes or other types of things, benches that you might want to incorporate into your project. And so there is an opportunity to kind of leverage both of these programs together, using my funding for more forestry focused initiatives, and then also tapping into maybe UCGC if you want to do more of the sort of gardening aspects, infrastructure aspects, small infrastructure aspects of your project. So the top is my email. Happy to speak with any of you about grants or just generally. We also have a technical assistance program. So even if you don't decide to apply for this grant, but you want to know about care of trees along your main streets, that's the type of technical assistance my program provides. So please reach out to me. If you have a specific grant-related inquiry, please direct it to that grant inbox. And then the last is just a link overall to my program and some of the other aspects of my program that I didn't speak to in this presentation. So I'll take, I guess, are we all going to take questions after? So yeah, are there any questions for me?
Yes, there's two that I'll give you right now. Would it be possible for you to share more info about the study that shows trees along right-of-way slow traffic?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, you could email that to me afterwards or speak a little bit about it now, but any resources you'd like to share, I will include in our email that we send out afterwards.
Yeah. And I can also direct you to that particular project in New London if it's also helpful to see what it looks like on the ground when it gets implemented.
Sure, thank you. And another question, are projects in environmental justice census tracts eligible, or does the entire community have to be considered a community of need?
Wait, are projects in
I can read it again.
Yeah.
Are projects in an environmental justice census tract eligible, or does the entire community have to be considered?
No, but just keep in mind that, again, like, you have to look at my tool. It's different. Our definition of environmental justice, or what we're using, communities of need, because we're federally funded, is different from the environmental justice map that Stephen shared, because that's state. So just keep in mind that it's a different tool. But No, the entire municipality or community does not have to be designated a community of need. And in fact, there is flexibility in that designation. For example, if you want to do work in a park that is not within one of those communities, but obviously is a resource for the neighboring community, there's opportunity to apply funds in that way. So if you have any questions, please just feel free to contact that deep.ucf grants inbox directly.
Thank you. That was all for now.
Should I just jump in, Emily? Okay. Hi, Chris Nelson. I'm from our Deep Sustainable Materials Management Program, and I will be talking about grants today as well, although the grants that we've been offering are probably on a slightly larger scale than Main Street settings. We've been doing municipality level grants and even regional group grants to COGS and regional waste authorities. But there are still applications where some of this could be applied to a Main Street setting. Next slide. One of the reasons that there's been a big focus on waste in recent years is because our disposal capacity for trash in the Northeast and in Connecticut is diminishing. One big example was we had the Mira trash to energy plant in Hartford that closed a few years ago, and we lost about 400,000 tons of capacity to get rid of waste at that facility. One of the issues for towns is that as the disposal capacity shrinks, the cost for disposal goes up. So the cost for the remaining local disposal options goes up, as well as the options that are further away where trash needs to be trucked or railed to landfills in states that are far away. So we are issuing grants to help towns reduce their waste, increase their recycling, and hopefully reduce their waste disposal costs. Next slide. One of the key areas that we've been focusing on as part of our efforts to reduce waste is focusing on organics as part of reducing the overall amount of trash. So we want to get food scraps out of the garbage. We want to get yard waste out of the garbage. I see it frequently as I drive around town. People have their 96-gallon cart on the side of the road, the night before pickup, and there's just like it's half full with yard waste. And we as residents in towns are paying a lot to get rid of that. So we want to encourage that type of organic / compostable material to be taken out and be handled, in different ways. We still see a lot of recyclable material that's showing up in the trash. So we want to get that out and going through better channels and getting it actually recycled or reused. And we also are encouraging towns to adopt new programs like unit-based pricing, which can incentivize residents with a cost signal to reduce the amount of trash that they're generating. One of the key things we've noticed is that for change to happen, it doesn't happen at the state level. We can only dictate so much what towns can do when they handle their trash. The towns are in charge of their own destinies in many cases. So this change has to happen at the municipal or regional level, and it's really important to get towns bought into wanting to be part of this change. The grants that I'm going to be summarizing in the next slide have been offered to municipalities as well as the regional groups I mentioned, like COGS and regional waste authorities, to help incentivize this change. Next slide. So going back a few years, the first grant we did, and we had done grants before this as well for various things, but these were some large chunks of money that we were allocated by the legislature. So the first one was our Sustainable Materials Management Grant Program, and we gave out over $5 million for that. That was for towns to do pilots, to combine unit-based pricing for trash, and that might be where you pay by the bag to get rid of it, as opposed to just paying for unlimited trash through your property taxes, and also allowing residents to divert their food scraps. So in some towns, that was a curbside collection of separated food scraps. In others, we looked at co-collected, where people would put bags of trash in their bin with bags of food scraps that would go to a facility where it would get sorted out, and the trash would go one way and the food scraps would go another. So we issued 19 grants there to 18 awardees. Some of the programs ended early, some finished, but they didn't transition to a permanent program. But some of them did transition to permanent programs, and that's the type of change we're hoping to continue to see moving forward with the other rounds of grants. The next grant round that we did was we received money for the formation of regional waste authorities. We don't have these across the entire state, but we do have a few of them. And what we've seen is that when towns come together to work on waste issues, there's a lot more synergy than when they are working on them individually. So one example, we have HRA in Western Connecticut. Their executive director has implemented numerous waste reduction programs on behalf of all their member towns. It's a very efficient way to do it, and there's a lot more coordination amongst those towns who are part of the regional waste authority. So we did issue grants to to 5 COGs who are looking into forming regional waste authorities, and they can look at waste and recycling issues on a broader, more regional scale. The next round of grants we got was $15 million for materials management infrastructure. And we were, again, offering this money to both towns and regional groups to develop new infrastructure that can handle waste. And just a couple examples of what we got for applications is City of New Haven put in for money to create a sorting facility where they could collect co-collected trash and food scraps and offer that curbside food collection to their residents, and then bring it in, sort it out, send the food scraps to a composting facility or an anaerobic digester, and send the trash to a proper disposal area. And I don't know if I touched on the percentage in the other slide I had up, but the reason why there's such an emphasis on food scrap is when we did our last waste characterization in 2015, more than 20% of what we throw out as Connecticut residents by weight is food scraps. It's pretty amazing. Food scraps are heavy, they're wet, and sending wet food scraps to a trash to energy burn plant just makes no sense because there's not a lot of BTU value there. It's much better going to an anaerobic digester where it could form methane and create electricity, or be composted and create a compost or a soil amendment. So we're hoping to get more projects going. One of the other kind of smaller scale projects that we funded under this MMI grant was towns that either wanted to start a leaf composting operation and integrate in food scraps collected in their towns, or they had a leaf composting operation underway and they wanted to kind of take it the next step and integrate in, food scraps that they've collected from their residents. So we're continuing to see more and more of these. It might be one town, it might be a group of towns doing this on a regional basis, but we encourage all of that because we just want to, find more off ramps for that food scrap in places where it can be handled in a more environmentally friendly way. The most recent round of grants we had was another round of Sustainable Materials Management Group. Sustainable Materials Management grants. We have $7.5 million to give out this time. We are currently reviewing those applications. Unfortunately, the deadline's closed, but we received 35 applications, and we're currently working through those to see which ones pass muster, and they'll get more money as well. Next slide. So advice for next steps: keep an eye out for future rounds of grant opportunities. It seems like the legislators have been happy with the success we've had so far, and we hope that they will continue to allocate money to us, every year or every few years, that we can offer the towns and regional groups. So just keep an eye on the DEEP website on grants that you might be able to apply for. For municipal folks who are on this call, I would suggest getting involved with our Connecticut Coalition for Sustainable Materials Management Initiative. This is a group where we come together, I'd say roughly quarterly, not necessarily once every 3 months, have virtual meetings with DEEP and municipal officials, and kind of talk about, what's going on, what towns are doing on waste issues, and oftentimes have the municipalities share updates on what they're working on, and other towns who are not yet maybe as active, I think usually get inspired to say, oh, that's something I'd like to look into more. So it's a great, platform for towns to share information with each other and kind of inspire each other. We do have a CCSMM newsletter. The link is on this slide if you want to sign up for it. And also, when this initiative first kicked off, the towns developed a menu of options for how, trash and recycling can be better handled. So that's posted on our website. That was from December 2020. Just another reference or a resource for municipal folks is we often hear from residents and other people like, oh, recycling is confusing. But in Connecticut, we've actually come together to develop a universal list. And this has, been developed with input from all the recycling facilities across the state. So, they come together and universally agree on, okay, these are the things that we will take in at this facility. And that's usually the mandatory recycling items like bottles, cans, and paper, but also other things that may not be mandatory items, but they can handle. So our universal list covers all that, and we always encourage municipalities to make sure their residents are aware of this list, so they are getting the right stuff in their recycling bins and not getting as much contamination. Next slide. Okay, this is just contact information. Bringing it back to the Main Street level, some of our grants could potentially be used to, request new trash and recycling bins for our Main Street or public space areas like parks. We have had smaller grant programs in the past for that. One thing to keep in mind if you decide that you want to apply for that type of funding, if there's a future round of funding, is to emphasize that this is an improvement upon what is already in place, because we cannot give grants to come into compliance with the law. We can give grants to improve your performance. So kind of an important nuance to keep in mind if you were to request money for that down the road. I was pleased to hear from Stephen's grant program, the UGCG, that trash and recycling bins might be funded under his program as well. So that might be something to look into as well if you're looking to get, say, new trash and recycling bins in a Main Street area on a more near-term basis than waiting for another round of waste-related grants. One other thing that we've been funding, which has been of interest, is a number of towns have asked for, if folks are familiar with like big belly bins for trash and recycling, there are now a couple different types of bins that towns are putting out scattered around town, where you can go and drop off your food scrap. So they're not picking it up curbside, but if you collect food scrap in your house or in your garage, you could go to one of maybe four. I'm thinking of my town in West Hartford. I can go to one of four spots and drop off my food waste every week, every other week, whatever I need to do. But more and more towns are kind of pursuing this as an option. So, there could be another funding opportunity for these types of bins to collect food waste around town. And that, those could potentially be put in a downtown area if there are a lot of restaurants and people want to, hopefully put only their leftover food scraps in there and not trash. What we typically see is that people need an app to open the bin. So if you're going to try to put something in there, you've probably registered to use it, and hopefully you're, incentivized enough to do the right thing and only put food scraps in there and nothing else. So, and that's what I had to share.
Chris, thank you. Some of the elements of a vibrant Main Street are keeping it clean and safe. So loved your bit about being able to request the new trash bins and the recycling, and also the big belly containers. I'm not super familiar with that, but sustainability efforts are also key to a vibrant Main Street. So definitely applicable to our membership. We do have one question for you. It is, what are the reasons the decommissioned waste to energy plants are not being refurbished and upgraded? If they were to be updated with better technology, would the state still have a disposal crisis?
This is a multi-layered response, but one issue is the last facility that closed down was publicly owned, the Mira facility in Hartford. It was run by a quasi-governmental, and I think they were looking for ballpark $350 million to refurbish it. And that money would have had to come from the legislature. And they were not willing to kind of put that money toward an aging plant that had, pretty much all of our waste to energy facilities in Connecticut are operating beyond their original kind of span of life, right? They've all been upgraded. And the ones that are privately owned now, they are putting money into refurbishing them. So they're trying to maintain the existing ones. But now, as far as getting new waste to energy facilities sited, it's really expensive. But that's not to say that it might not happen, but it would be a privately funded project. And I think probably the biggest challenge is getting either siting council and or local approval to build. I mean, no one is going to want a new trash to energy facility in their town, right? That's going to be a very difficult challenge to overcome. But we could get an application in on any day, and we would process it, making sure, that it's meeting whatever needs to be submitted for, getting proper authorizations. And for waste to energy, you would need an air permit, you need a waste permit, you probably need a water permit, and maybe a few other things as well. But I do think local opposition to a proposed new waste to energy facility would be really high and probably very challenging to overcome.
Thank you. Another one actually just came through. We can take this one. I was wondering if anyone could speak more about what a municipality has to do to contact to get involved with in the Coalition for Sustainable.
CCSMM, yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
So
Yep.
you could really just what I need is I need an email from the chief elected official saying I want my town to participate in this, and that's really all I need. And I can then add that town to the list of participating municipalities. I think right now we have 104 of 169 towns signed on. Some of our more rural towns where they don't handle trash curbside, they're a little more hands off on their trash issues. But I think there's still, information to be shared that it's valuable to all towns. So we do encourage all towns to participate, and it's not a large commitment. We ask people to join the quarterly calls when we have them. Get on the email list, and you can kind of pick and choose what you want to do. But it's not a heavy lift. But we just do need an email from the chief elected official to me saying I'd like to sign on, and that's it.
Great, thank you. And I think that was all for now. So we're ready to move on to the next part, Emily.
Great, thanks so much. I'm Emily Tully. I'm with the Office of Innovative Partnerships and Planning, which is within the Office of the Commissioner here at DEEP. You might also know us as the Client Concierge Service. I'm also part of the municipal team. So if you were able to join part one of our DEEP and downtown presentations with Connecticut Main Street, I spoke last time about our municipal team and municipal team services. And Amanda Limisher, our Brownfields program coordinator, also spoke at that time. And so she asked me she wasn't able to join us today, but asked me to provide an update on Brownfields grant opportunity for municipalities. So her program coordinates DEEP's CERCLA 128A Brownfields Open Space Grant. And we are anticipating a round 3 of funding this fall. There have been 2 previous rounds funded. It is open to nonprofits and municipalities for assessment or remediation. These are for projects that promote brownfields reuse as open space. So great for downtowns that have these kind of unused brownfield spaces that could then be turned into something useful for the community, like park space, greenways, or other public recreational spaces. So the requests are available for $250,000 for assessment or for remediation. And there's a total of $750,000 anticipated to be available in that next round of funding anticipated in the fall. So keep your eye out for that. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Amanda or the Brownfields program directly. And there's also a link to the website here. And these slides will be available. So these links will be available to you after today's presentation. And if you have any questions about that program or other grant programs, please do reach out to the Client Concierge Service, the municipal team. Our job is to be the front door for DEEP, meaning if you don't know who to go to or what programs are available or what your regulatory requirements are for any of your Main Street projects, reach out to us and we can help you figure that out and figure out who to talk to. We have this kind of information available in an email newsletter for municipalities that goes out every couple of weeks. We anticipate sending out another one early next week. And that will have information on things like the upcoming triennial review of the Connecticut Water Quality Standards public meeting, our Park Connect summer events, funding opportunities like the one I just mentioned, and also DECD's Office of Brownfield Remediation round 22 notice of funding availability that's out right now, and information on things that are maybe useful to municipalities, like our new websites. We have a new Tribal Affairs website, and the 2024 Clean Hydrogen Roadmap is now available. So if you want to get that kind of information, you can either email us at deep.concierge and we can help you figure out where to sign up, or you can scan the QR code to sign up directly for that email newsletter. You also can just reach out to the Client Concierge Service at any time for any questions about projects you're working on, if you want to have a meeting with our regulatory staff, or talk about grant opportunities. We're happy to help facilitate those conversations for you. And that's all for me. So I think if we want to go to, if there are any other questions that have come up in the chat for me or for any of the other presenters.
Thank you, Emily. I did invite everyone to submit their last questions into the Q&A or the chat. So while we're just given a few minutes to see if anybody has any final questions, any final thoughts or words from any of the speakers on the DEEP team? If not, one thing I wanted to say is that if you're a member of Connecticut Main Street and there's a grant you're intending to apply for, we're happy to assist with letters of support if that's something that the application requires, and that's a member exclusive benefit to those that are in our network. Nothing else came through, so maybe everything was just straightforward, or they'll reach out to you with their questions. There will be an evaluation to fill out, but I'll just close now with a few final words. And just thank you so much to the DEEP team. It's been great to do this two-part series. And I look forward to our relationship going forward. So I will close out from here. We invite you to join the more than 100 communities around the state committed to improving their Main Street by becoming a member of Connecticut Main Street Center. As a member, you receive exclusive help and resources to support your downtown work. Please visit ctmainstreet.org to learn more. Join us on August 14th to learn more about EV charging as it applies to your downtown district with one of our professional affiliates, Gyre 9. Register now for the webinar at ctmainstreet.org/events. We also have upcoming our Spotlight on Main. It's going to take place in Thomaston on September 4th from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. You can register for that now. We'll be live in person in Thomaston that afternoon. You can register at ctmainstreet.org/events. And lastly, we are gearing up for our third cohort of the Main Street Accelerator program. This program can be an excellent next step once you have your formal downtown steering committee in place. Join us on September 18th for a virtual information session on our leadership development program dedicated to downtown and Main Street projects. You can register now at ctmainstreet.org/events. Once again, we thank our sponsors and program partners. When you exit this webinar, you should be prompted to complete an evaluation for this presentation. Please take a moment to share your thoughts with us as it helps us shape our programming so it's most valuable to you. That concludes today's webinar. Have a great day.